At that point, you come to a realization that in the moment of forgiveness, there is peace. In the moment of forgiveness, there is joy. In the moment of forgiveness, there is calm. In the moment of forgiveness, there is just a sense of, or a wave that just comes across you that makes everything to just be still. Hi guys, and welcome to my channel. Today's video is going to be a very solemn one because I'm going to be talking more of taking care of my dying patient. Now in this video, I'm going to be giving you guys 10 things I learned from my dying patient. In no particular order, I'll just be listing them as they come to the top of my head and kind of explain to you guys how I felt through that moment or the lesson that I learned at that particular moment. The very first lesson that I've learned from my dying patient is the value or the importance of time, guys. At that moment when your life is fleeting away from you, I have seen how patients have held on to time. I have seen how patients have sat in their beds or laying down in their beds and they're just reflecting on how they have lived their life. If they felt that the life that they lived was worth it, if they felt that the life that they lived was having so much impact and value to other people, just the value of time, the time spent on earth, especially for those patients who have been given like a time frame with which they would be living, or those patients who have been referred to hospice. I can tell you that most of them will come to a very solemn moment of their lives. Most of the times you want to come into this patient's room, you want to give them medication, they are very quiet, they are very solemn. It looks like they're so lost in their own thoughts. The value of time when you are caring for a dying patient is so important that sometimes it's going to rub off on you. Sometimes it's going to cause you to pause and think and even have a deep reflecting moment on your own life to see if every second, every minute that passes by, are you making good use of it? If not, it is time for you to go back to the drawing board and make some changes in order to impact lives, and make some changes in order to make sure that when you leave this earth, you are going to be remembered for something good. I have had patients who have held my hands and have been like, Stephanie, I feel like I have done a lot of good in this life. Stephanie, I feel like my time spent on this earth was really, really worth it, wasn't a waste, and I'm so happy that even if I should leave today, I'm going to be at peace. I remember there was one of my patients who was on very, very high oxygen demand, and the one thing she told me was, when I grew up, I had a very bubbly childhood, and every month I always make sure that I reflect on my childhood and I try to impact those kids who are battling cancer by sending them $25 every month, just to make sure that they are also going to have a memorable childhood as they grow up. And that touched me so much. It was just so touching to hear her say this story of how she's trying to impact the lives of these children who maybe are suffering and are not having like the kind of quality, bubbly experience that she had as a kid growing up. So the importance, the value of time when you're taking care of a dying patient is so precious. It's just something that has a way of rubbing off on you that will make you to go back home and be like, I need to start taking an account of how I have also been living my life, so that when I get to that point, I won't be feeling like I lived a life that was reckless and I lived a life that wasn't well spent. The next important thing I learned from taking care of my dying patient is the importance of presence. Look, that moment when your patient is reminiscing, that moment when your patient is thinking of, how they're going to exit this world, there is just that peace that comes within them or upon them when you walk into the room. I've had so many patients that when I walk into the room, I'm not a hospice nurse, I work in a hospital and I take care of critical patients. And so taking care of critical patients will mean me coming in contact with a lot of dying patients. And I've had patients who have been so critical that they have passed on my shift. I've had patients who have been so critical that they had to be discharged to a hospice home, to an LTAC, where they're going to be taken on right up until, they leave this world. Most of the time, some of them will just like their just being left alone, or sometimes some of them will just like you to just come in, give them their medication, just sit with them, hold their hands, have a calm, quiet conversation. Sometimes they want to ask you about your family. Sometimes they just want you to be around. I've even had patients who are dying and then they're going to call me to come into the room, and all they want is just for me to sit down and talk with them. Just being there gives them some sense of closure, gives them some sense of peace, gives them some sense of, someone cares about them, someone is looking out for them, there's someone who has so much concern for them. The value of presence in the life of a dying patient is so important. I have seen patients who have had family members, and even though there were like 5-6 family members in the room of that dying patient, just the presence of the nurse, just the presence of maybe the medical doctor, or just the presence of the tech, just the presence of the respiratory therapist if the patient is on oxygen, just gives them a sense of calm, just gives them a sense of, someone else cares about me or cares about my loved ones, and the person is there offering us this hope, offering us this sort of comfort. So the value of presence is so important in the life of dying patients. The next very important lesson I've learned from caring for my dying patients is the importance of listening. Look, let me tell you something. So many patients at that moment when they are about to exit, especially if they are aware that it is very critical and there is no, or I don't want to say there is no going back, but the chances of them becoming very healthy is very slim. Most of them love when you come in and they chit chat with you. They're going to ask you questions. Sometimes they might be personal, sometimes they might not, they might just be general questions. They just want to talk, they just want to be listened to. They are going to be telling you maybe their life's experiences. They are going to be telling you the sort of things that they have gone through in life, places they have traveled, their favorite places, their family, their grandkids, the things they love doing as when they were younger. So that essence of sitting there and listening to them gives them some sort of validation, gives them some sort of comfort. It is very soothing for them. I have had patients whom, when I was caring for them, especially when it is time to give them medication, after giving them medication, they would not love for you to just walk out. That's when they're going to kind of open a conversation. They probably will ask like open-ended questions just so that you guys are chit-chatting and not just a yes or no questions. So most of the times, dying patients, they love being listened to, and this is the moment where you're going to be very patient with them. This is the moment where, and you have a downtime and you feel like you can just spare like 5 minutes, just come listen to them talk, offer some sort of empathy to them, be very open, be very polite to them, and it gives them some sort of validation, but especially it gives them a lot of comfort. I know I've had certain situations wherein my patient was very appreciative when I came in and I listened to everything that they said. Sometimes they will hold your hands, sometimes they would want to feel like you are really into the story that you are telling them. And so these little things that you do for this dying patient sums up and gives a lot of meaning and value to them that you will not understand unless you are in their shoes. Sometimes it will feel like they like to talk a lot, but that is their own way of expressing their own gratitude, or maybe how they have seen life and how they have lived life. And sometimes this is also that moment where they are going to be passing on knowledge to younger ones on their experiences, things they have learned, lessons they want other people to pick up from their own lifestyle. And it just means a lot for them to know that there is someone who is listening to what they are saying. The next thing on my list is going to be life's true priorities. Look, I have taken care of patients that they would sit and they are going to be writing down the list of things that they have achieved, maybe their academic achievements, their material achievements, family ties and bonds, grandkids, worldly possessions. And most of them will come and they will be like, hey Stephanie, In my 60 something years of existence, these are the things that I have amassed, these are the things that I have been successful in getting. But I feel like at this moment, all these things do not make any sense, because I feel like I'm going to a place where I am not going to be able to take all of these things. And so they come to a moment where material possessions, their lifetime achievements doesn't make any kind of direct impact to them, and so they tend to lean more on family, on the value and the love and the people around them. I've even had patients who have lectured me on, Stephanie, you know what, I've come to the point where we fight for certain things, and then at the end we have to leave everything that we have fought for all our lives. This is the point where they are going to be saying certain things that you also will be reflecting, and it's going to rub off with the true meaning of life. It's going to rub off on you on the real priorities of life, whether possessions or family, or whether love or the material things. The next thing I've learned from taking care of my dying patients is the need for forgiveness. I remember a particular incident that happened that I had to care for a patient. This patient was already very critical, that they were already asking for family to come in. The patient was already made comfort care, and so grandkids were coming in, brothers, sisters, uncles, kids. And so I remember one incident when I went to give medications for this patient, and I think they were kind of having a soul-wrenching moment. They were talking, they were very quiet when I walked in, and I could tell that the atmosphere was very heavy, because maybe at that point they were releasing, or they were relieving all maybe the remorse or everything that they have had to do to each other. I remember at some point one of them was like, let's stop crying. I think I was just passing by the room, and I could hear that they were crying in the room, and I could hear that someone was saying, it's okay, let's forgive one another, let us move on. We've all learned that in this life, the most important thing is family. The most important thing is making sure that we are each other's keeper. And so that was just a very heart touching moment for me, because at that point you come to a realization that in the moment of forgiveness there is peace, in the moment of forgiveness there is joy, in the moment of forgiveness there is calm, in the moment of forgiveness there is just a sense of, or a wave that just comes across you that makes everything to just be still. And so that was one heart, soul wrenching moment that I would never forget, that I learned from my dying patient. You see, the moment when a patient is exiting, it has a way of bringing family together. It has a way of, letting people talk out their grievances. I know that the hospital wasn't the appropriate place for them to say all of this, but there was no guarantee that if that or that conversation did not happen in the hospital, that they were going to have it elsewhere. And so it was just a very solemn moment, and I think they were in there for almost 2 hours just talking. And so I gave them their family moment so that they can talk and have their peace and have their moment, and just try to hash out things. And I can tell you that everybody walked out of there. Some of them were kind of feeling sad, some of them were kind of smiling. I could see them hugging each other, holding each other, and it was just a very, very beautiful moment to behold. The next thing I have learned from caring for a dying patient is the simple little acts of kindness. I remember I was caring for a patient who had cancer that had, I think it was breast cancer that had metastasized to the brain. And so this patient also did not even have family that was visiting them. And so every time this patient was going to ask for something, whether it was orange juice, whether it was water, whether it was sandwich, I had to make sure that I got it to them. If they wanted it warm, if they wanted it cold, if they wanted extra ice, I just made sure that they had it the way they are. And so this little act of kindness for a dying patient means a lot to them. You have no idea how just that expression of love to this patient, they have a way of just saying thank you that just goes directly to your heart. I also remember I had a patient who, I think she had liver cancer that had metastasized to the brain, and she was on chemo. She was having like the typical appearance of a chemo patient, had lost hair, lost weight, appetite was an issue for them. And so every time I'll come into the room and I'll give them their medication, every time I come into the room and I clean them up, basically every time that I do anything for the patient, before I step out, they would hold my hands, they would blow a kiss, and they would say thank you. So little acts of kindness, just picking up maybe trash in the room, making sure the trash is empty, making sure that things are in place the way they like it, making sure that they are just happy, just want a clean gown, or the sheets are dirty, or they want like a spoon, or they wanted like maybe some applesauce. Just getting them what they want whilst in the hospital just makes their day. I can tell you that sometimes you would be very surprised at the little things that you will do for this dying patient that will just make them smile or laugh or giggle at you. I remember there was a patient who just wanted a straw just to drink water from a cup. And the moment I handed them this straw, you have no idea how they thanked me. And I was asking myself, it's just a straw, but they were like, thank you so much, thank you so much. And so these little acts of kindness are the things that are going to be so important, they make a lot of meaning to this dying patient. The next thing is accepting and letting go. I know I have had some patients who have been very difficult to accept the news or the reality of their medical conditions. And I've also had patients who have been like, you know what, this is what it is at this point. It is time for me to accept it and to let go of me trying to fight. It is time for me to make use of the little time that I have to spend it with my family, to share and to show my appreciation to them. So sometimes it's going to be very difficult for some patients to let go or to accept the reality, but I have seen some patients that it has been kind of difficult, but not as difficult for them to accept it. I know that accepting the reality of, look, life is going to be shorter than you expected is very difficult. But watching a patient coming to terms to the reality of mortality, to the reality that their life is going to be cut short, maybe all the plans, the dreams, the aspirations, the things that they had set for themselves, their family, their loved ones, maybe will not be attained or maybe will not be achieved. Learn from this patient how to accept the good and the bad that comes in this life. There are going to be times in life when you are going to be so happy because of the good things that are happening in your life, and there are going to be times when sometimes some bad things will happen to you and it's so difficult to accept it. But from taking care of dying patients, you will learn the essence or the act of letting go and accepting situations for what they are. The next thing I've learned is the fragility of life. Look, life is so fragile. It is at this moment that you will sit and you will reflect and be like, so this is all of life. It is at this moment that you will sit and you will be like, oh, so some other person is at the club clubbing while another person is here fighting for their dear life. It is at this moment of caring for these patients that you would understand that, you know what, maybe something that you were complaining of about your own life and seeing another person fighting for their own dear life, you will know how fragile life is. You will come to the realization that life is fragile, life is unpredictable, that life comes with the good, the bad, and we should all accept it as it comes. You would learn that, in as much as we can always make sure that we avoid certain things to bring, negative impacts on our life, that life is unpredictable. There are certain things that we cannot kind of control about life. To also understand that life can come just as a woman will give birth, and at the same way, life can go just as we have patients whose lives end in the hospital. Sometimes you will see some of them talking about the sort of jovial life they have lived, and then to see how it's all ending right before you will make you appreciate life even more, will make you know that, you know what, in as much as there's so much life, there is so much happiness, joy, there is also that weakness and that thin thread that can just snap life away, and that life is very fragile, life is very soft, weak, as opposed to what we think life is. The next thing I've learned is the significance of closure. Look, I can tell you that there have been so many patients that I have cared for, and at that dying moment, they want family around them, they want to talk, they want to express themselves, they want to ask for forgiveness, they want to explain things, they want to be at that point of, remember this thing that I did to you, I am so sorry, but I actually did this because of this. I remember there was a time I had to give medication to a patient and family was in there, and they said I should go ahead and give the medication. I think it was an IV medication, and one of the family member was trying to explain something that had happened a while back, and she was kind of asking the patient to please forgive them. At that point, it was just so touching that the patient at that point was like, I do understand, it's okay, I forgive you. And I understood that this was what it was at the time. I didn't really know that this was what your intentions were. At that moment, you find people being open, you find people being vulnerable, people get to explain and express themselves. And so there is that sort of closure that comes, that you want to make sure that whilst you exit this life, everyone is in peace with you, everyone is at peace with themselves, and just accepting or resolving conflicts at that point is just something that I have learned to also manage whilst I am still hale and healthy. The last thing on my list is going to be the importance of life. Look, I have had dying patients that even at that moment where I am so, I don't want to say remorseful for a lack of a better word, but whilst I'm feeling so bad and my heart is, kind of heavy that I'm taking care of a patient who is almost exiting out of this life, they would sit and they are kind of telling you stories of their life, how they have lived their life, and they will be telling you how they have done good things for people and how those acts of kindness have come back to them. You will sit and you will reflect on your own life. They will tell you how they were there for their family, how they showed love, how they expressed forgiveness, or they showed forgiveness to people who hurt them. They are just going to be telling you stories that will make you sit and just reflect on the meaning of their own life pertaining to the story that they're going to be telling you, and also to the meaning of your own life. At those moments when they're telling you those stories, it's going to be a point of reflection for you. It's going to be a moment of sitting down and asking yourself, if I were at this point, would I have such good and touching, impactful stories to tell others for them to learn from me? So these are going to be 10 things I have learned from taking care of my dying patient. I hope that you can resonate. I hope that you can relate to some of these things. Maybe not your patients, maybe family, or maybe friends, your neighbors. And if there's anything that you have learned, or if there's anything that you remember that you have learned from being around a dying patient, please do drop a comment in the comment section. Let us chit chat. And if you're new to this channel, welcome. Please do consider hitting the subscribe button, liking and sharing. And from me to you, I'll see you in my next video. Bye guys.